Welcome to Advertising is Dead with Sid. Sid, thanks for doing this. I mean, I've been meaning to do this chat for a while now.
Yeah, I've been waiting for you to invite me ever since I've seen your podcast.
It's been one of those like I need to call Sid onto the podcast. Need to call Sid on podcast has been on that list for a bit, and I'm like I'll wait till Jan to make this happen. But one of the reasons I want to kind of get you on the podcast is a the kind of journey that you had.
Mhm.
Um, Career wise, and there are other specific things as well, but from an overarching standpoint, what I've enjoyed every time I've spoken to you is that I feel that you have a perspective on the entire space, especially on the marketing content and the overall, I would say the whole what I call new age product scenario of things, which I found very enriching for me to kind of learn from, and I think people who are our audience could kind of learn from. So if you start from a slightly broader space, what's your perspective on the broader, not just marketing, but overall business space, and what kind of shifts have you seen in let's say the last couple of years, especially last year?
Yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, I think we've always been challenged. When you think you know how to get to the consumer and what a compelling story is, you're always challenged and you're always sort of, you've missed a trick, be it media or the story that you say, or for that matter, if you've done it, somebody else has already done it. And those are sort of
Yeah.
the pain points that we have. I think for us, one of the things that we've been sort of dabbling with is this word authenticity, right? I've come from a world where you pretty much fabricated a 30-second ad and you took 6 months to do it, right? So it is well
Mm.
chiseled, well done, and exactly what you want the consumer to see. But of course, it lacked authenticity. And today,
Mm.
when you do that, whether you take 6 months, you take 1 month, you take, I think the consumer sees right through it. And I think when you claim that you've got this in your product or that in your product, or if you have this endorser, they see it. They know it's an ad. So at the end of the day, they said, okay, thanks for making me aware, but I'm not sure if I really want it, or for that matter, you don't need to tell me that. I'll make my own choice. I think today,
Yeah.
in this space, one of the pain points for me is just authenticity. To tell the consumer that really, why
Yeah.
did I really launch this product? Why have I done this? And it's not easy to tell that story without making it sound ad-like or in your face. And therefore, we are obviously always questioning this word authenticity. So when we throw out something to consumer, even if it's a pack shot, we ask ourselves, is this authentic? Is this really what we want? Is this us?
Yeah.
And how do we tell the consumer that this is us?
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the spaces that I think most advertisers, if they're not facing a challenge already, will face in times to come. Is really, are you
Yeah.
authentic? And I think the answer to that is really always asking yourself, and this has probably become more relevant now than it was earlier. It was always relevant, but I think I'm struggling with it more. Is to, whenever you say something, is this true to the brand? Is
Hmm.
this true to a
Yeah.
relationship? When we
Yeah.
discuss, when we have a brand, when we look at an influencer, we literally look at the influencer and say, is this really what the influencer wants to say? Or are we forcing,
Hmm.
fitting it into that influencer's, post? And I think those are
Yeah.
sort of the things that we are struggling with. And that's sort of the new, apart from the various other things, that is currently my pain point.
Yeah. What I also find interesting with the entire journey that um, you guys have had, right? And if you start off with just Epigamia, the fact that this is a category that didn't even exist. I mean, we had dahi,
Yeah.
but the concept of, I mean, unless someone who had traveled would have tasted, let's say, Greek yogurt, you didn't necessarily know what it was. And uh, if you kind of go back to that time, and how you looked at, okay, we're going to launch a product which doesn't exist in the market unless, like I said, you traveled and stuff like that. Where do you start from, and how do you kind of build almost a consumer from scratch, if that's the term to use, or was it a term from scratch?
No, I think when we launched the product, I think it was super genuine and authentic. You know,
Mm.
one of the founders of the company is an Indian American. So he's
Mm-hmm.
an Indian who's lived all his life in America and has come to India to set up a startup. And he said, I want to get the
Yeah.
best of East and West, which is how the name Epigamia came about, because that means basically a peace treaty that was signed between the Mauryan Empire and the Greeks, during
Mm.
that battle. So it is essentially about East meets West. And when he thought about the products that he could launch, he says, there's Greek yogurt, which is essentially a Greek straining process, but it's dahi. So it was very authentic in our thought of launching that product. Well, that's the thought, but when you put it out there, you know, that's the challenge. And it's a complex product. It's a short shelf life product. It requires a cold
Mm.
chain. So when we put it out there in the first 100,
And we
200
don't have
stores,
cold chain in India.
there weren't many people
And
who were willing to manage it, or for that matter, even if they
mm,
had it, we didn't have the scale, or for that matter, we weren't able to convince them of the vision that we had for them to take
mm,
on the large
yeah,
investments that are required. So we did it ourselves. So we went to the top 500 stores in this country, we put it in the shelves, and we just got people to taste the product. And like you said, the early adopters were the ones who probably knew something like Greek yogurt exists.
mm-hmm,
It did exceptionally well in the US. So people who've traveled there, tried various brands of Greek yogurts there, they would have come back and said, "Hey, there's one here," and
yeah,
they picked it up and tried. In fact, that's how I joined Epigamia. I just saw it on the shelf and I said, "Hey, this is an interesting looking product. Let me call these guys. I'd love to work for them." Uh, and that's how we got our early adopters as well. And that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years. We've been just getting people to taste the product.
mm,
We've been telling a few people it's Greek yogurt, but we've just said, you know what, just taste it. And we've been lucky for a few fronts. One, we have a damn good product. Two, it's a familiar
mm,
product. It's very, very relatable. It's not different from the dahi that you eat, right? It's not like the baked
yeah,
chips versus the chips, which are fundamentally very different products.
yeah. We have to explain the difference and
They
stuff
explain
like
the
that. Yeah.
difference. So we don't have to explain to them, and we've got most of the current users today probably bought us without really knowing what a Greek yogurt is, or for that matter, the fact that there's got enough protein in it. They said it's inherently healthy, and that's how they tasted it. So we've got all our consumers just by getting them to taste the product, and of course them tasting it and then passing on word of mouth to their friends, and consumers sort of just lapped up the product. So in that sense, like I said, we were authentic. We were a very relatable category, and we were a
Mm.
pretty good tasting product. So that sort of helped conversions in many ways. And like I've told in many webinars and many podcasts, I've spent all my marketing money on just getting people to taste the product. It's been as simple as that.
Yeah, because I find that intriguing, right? Because you're looking at a product which, like you said, there wasn't a large cold chain. India traditionally never has had that. You had to kind of get it into people's hands. I remember that's how I actually tasted it for the first time. I was walked into a Nature's Basket, and I remember sort of on the shelf, this person walking around said, "Do you want to taste it?" And I tasted it. I said, "Okay." And I remember buying the flavored ones. Um, and what I also found interesting is over time, just the way you added more products into the mix. I mean, there's just the not just categories, but also like ranges within categories as well. Um, can you talk about what the thought process behind that was? Like, because it's interesting when I see spreads on one end, I see artisanal curd, I'm seeing, like I've tried the the coconut yogurt. Is it the
Mhm.
coconut one? The coconut yogurt, yes.
Yeah.
And I think I've sampled enough because I've actually used your DTC through lockdown. It was one of my saving graces for my morning smoothie, or just generally have dahi at home. I'd love to hear a thought on how that came about, and how did you then kind of, what was initially sort of, let's educate about one thing, but you also brought in stuff that was familiar. How did that whole process of expansion kind of go in terms of just from the consumer's mindset?
Yeah. So for us, it was quite sort of, again, intuitive and authentic in the sense that most of the people who sort of started the company and joined the company early on, we all love food, and like most people do.
Mm,
And we all realize that,
yeah.
in the process of creating a product, we are actually activists of taste and advocates of health. Okay, so when I mean activists of taste, we are crazy about taste. So nothing leaves the Epigamia table that is not tasty. And if it does, you
Mm,
know what, we'll pull it back because someone told us that, you guys got it wrong. So we're activists of taste and we're advocates of health. In other words, uh, I think everyone has a very different connotation of health. So you might want protein, I might just want intermittent fasting, or portion control, or I might just, what, I'll eat whatever I want, but I'll work out. So everyone has their own sort of routine of health, and we say, you know what, we don't tell you what's right, but you
mm,
should know your sort of own health parameters, and we'll give you a set of products that fit into your sort of parameters. So with that in mind, and the brand, which is deep down, we the core of the brand is to push boundaries. We set about saying that, we're going to
mm,
contemporize traditional products and traditional dairy. And that was sort of the core single brief that we
mm,
gave to our product team and our brand teams. And with that, while Greek yogurt was the first one, which is essentially taking your dahi, which is Robin to the Batman or the Katori to the Thali, to being Batman, an independent event
yeah.
that you can have as a snack. To curd, we are saying, you know what, let's add probiotics and make it the first, and also make it the first lactose-free curd in India. We dabbled a little bit with mishti doi, saying, you know what can we do with mishti doi? And we made it lactose-free and gave it a bit of a caramel touch to it. To now saying, you know, Greek yogurt, and let's make it drinkable. So we got it smoothies, which is really the way we see it internally is our tribute to lassi in this country. To finally, one of the big.
I was actually going to say that it's not a traditional smoothie
Yeah,
taste. It's got a
yeah.
very it's Indianized
Yeah, so it's
in
our
that
contemporary
in a
version
good way.
of lassi. And then last year we said, you know, what can we do with ghee? And we said, you know, Chef came out with a fantastic product on spreads. So we said, let's add a little bit of blueberry to it. And we launched the first sort of ghee spreads, or spreads made from ghee. So that's been the thought process. And then sometime early last year, we said, you know what's the next health platform that we want to sort of take on, and we saw that plant-based was one of them. And you know, truth be told, we didn't find great tasting products. He says, okay, let's take it as a challenge. Let's really knock the daylights out of plant-based products. Let's make the tastiest plant-based products that one can get out there. And we said, you know, we understand yogurt. So we said the first one we made was coconut yogurt. It surprised us as well because when Chef, you know, I remember sitting in a meeting and we were having a very heated meeting on the business table, and there was hardcore numbers discussed among some 7 or 8 of us. And this guy comes in with a sample of products that Chef had sent. And we tasted mango coconut yogurt, and we were like, whoa, that's the best thing we've tasted Epigamia till date. And so we were surprised ourselves that we could sort of get great taste even with
I've
plant-based
eaten a lot
products.
of it, so I can just say I totally agree with that. It is super yum. It's been a constant for me in recent times.
Yeah, so we're super proud of that, and we got excited about plant-based. So now we're trying stuff with almonds, oats. We're super excited about a smoothie, plant-based smoothie that we'll launch in maybe 3-4 months. So yeah, it's the journey is based on just the fact that the brand is seeped into pushing boundaries to contemporize traditional products.
How has data played into this, right? Because what would be interesting to see is that because you are launching products, and then you're also learning from what consumers are really liking, what they're buying and stuff. How much has data really played into choices you kind of made? Okay, let's launch this one, or maybe let's keep this on hold, and this is the kind of consumer for this. So this is how we target them. This is how we push the product towards them. How much has data played a role in that?
So we are a data-driven company because the business demands it. Like I said, we're a short shelf life company. So we can't oversell into a store and we can't undersell into a store. So every transaction is done on the salesman goes there, punches the order. So we get live information of how much is actually sold into the store. And because it's short shelf life, there's really no inventory in the store. So we get to know a surrogate for offtake. So it's offtake driven. So like I said, you know, if a product is not moving, that means there's something wrong. We get to know it early and we pull off the plug in that product. Plus, because I had a whole army of people getting people to sample the products there, be it in store or in marathons and events. We used to get quick feedback from the army on the ground saying, you know, what are people saying, and that sort of helped us sort of at least close in on the taste profiles, the flavor profiles, and so on and so forth. With regards to functional platforms, I think we've got this really crazy set of consumers who innovate ahead of us. So they tell us, hey guys, this is what I'm looking at. So, you know, the new language is kefir. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Someone's talking about kefir. Let's get some kefir products going. So I think consumers help us on that one. And we've got a good bunch of consumers. I'm on email conversation with at least 100 consumers on a weekly basis. We have a D2C platform. So they relay a lot of stuff to me, which seems completely new. I mean, there was this one consumer who tasted our coconut yogurt and she asked me, what is the starch that's present in the coconut yogurt? And I was like,
wow,
okay, wait a minute.
I've never thought of that question.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So I went to Chef. I said, Chef, someone's asking what's the percentage of starch and what is the starch? So, so Chef said it's tapioca. So then I went to the consumer and I said, it's tapioca. And she said, wow, fantastic. So we changed our labeling from calling out starch as actually tapioca, because that's what consumers really want to hear. So I think consumers innovate before us. So it's about just listening, talking to them, and they relay a lot of information to us as well. So an anecdotal data in that sense.
You mentioned D2C, right? And what I find and I didn't know this till I think the first time I spoke to you late last year, was that you didn't TTC was not a prime focus, right? You were obviously, because of the cold chain, because of everything else, you were like you're looking at specific stores. You were pretty much brick and mortar in that thing, and then lockdown happened, and then you built a D2C platform overnight. Yeah, I'd love to hear the story of how that was built, because I think I I remember you gave me a brief point and I was like, that's a great story. And then just kind of the curve you've been through since then, in terms of just like not just like learning how people buy product, but also like how your consumer understanding might have evolved. And I'd love for you
Yeah.
to get into that.
Yeah. So actually, that's a great point. So when COVID happened, so prior to COVID, 95% of our business was through the retail store. About 5% of the business were through
Yeah.
e-commerce platforms, like the big baskets and the Amazons of the world. But pretty much most consumers, and there's an inherent insight there because consumers buy their fresh product from the neighborhood store and they'd like to see the dates and so on and so forth. And that's really where the business was built. But of course, COVID happened, and while supply chains got constrained, what we really saw was that as the stores started coming up, and our supply lines also started coming up, we started putting stock in the store. But because of excessive demand, there used to be a lot of consumers to go to the store and they didn't find the product. And they used to send us an email saying, "Guys, how can I get hold of your product?" At that point in time, in e-commerce and players also sort of struggling to manage orders and so on and so forth. So we said, you know what, we have our own feet on street who are actually supplying to stores. We have our own depots. Why don't we just start a front end? I mean, consumers who want to order from us, they can order, and we have aggregated stock, so we should be able to service some level of demand that is there. So here I was, a brick and mortar marketing guy who understands comms, understands commercial, but had no clue what digital was or what it meant. So I said, okay, fine, let's do it. And before you know it, there was this IIT guy in our team, 22-year-old, who turned around a website in 2, 3 days. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not even ready for this, right? So he turned around a website in 2, 3 days. We did a test with family and friends for about a couple of days. We got some of the chinks about supplies and deliveries done. And yeah, that's how we started ordering. I mean, we took orders. We started a bit of performance marketing, which I'm still learning as we speak. It's the big bad world. But
Yeah.
we started taking orders, and then we realized that because the existing stores couldn't service demand, a whole bunch of consumers came onto our platform to buy. And these are all existing Epigamia consumers. Someone like you who's been looking for our products but couldn't find it. And we were like doing,
Yeah.
500 to 600 orders a day across the top 5 towns. And we had the infrastructure to do it. And it also gave us the confidence to launch new products. We launched the Koyo through the platform, which is a coconut yogurt. We launched it through the platform. We said it's a unique product. We can't get people to taste the product before actually putting it out there. So why don't we just do a pre-order campaign? So we did our first pre-order of yogurts ever in the history of the world.
I cannot get over this.
Yeah, I, I
A, I can get the reference of the idea, which is very tech, but just the fact that that's something you tried, for me is it just blows my mind as to pre-ordering yogurt. I would have never thought that would be a thing,
yeah,
but
it was, it just seemed to fit in, right? Because one, we weren't able to go to the store and get the product there. We weren't able to get early reads. We knew that there's a definite friction to finding such kind of products in the market. So there's a bunch of people waiting to sort of anyway just try anything that's sort of plant-based. And we said, how do we get the first 1,000 consumers to try? So we said, let's just put a pre-order sign there, put a few ads on Facebook. And in 2 days or 2.5 days, we got 1,000 such orders that we had to shut the system because we didn't have any more stock. And it was,
I was one of those people who pre-ordered yogurt. I'm admitting to that fact. I just thought it was a really cool idea, and I opened the site and I saw it, and I'm like, what?
yeah,
Let's just like it's okay. It's yogurt. You can just pre-order it.
no.
How different can it be?
And
And it was yum.
it was fantastic because we got 1,000 orders. We supplied the 1,000 orders. We sent them an email as soon as they got it. We had about 300, 400 of them respond to that email saying, this is what they like, this is what they did not like. And it was just fantastic. And we were able to sort of make some small changes to the product. We realized that the product travels differently in the packaging, unlike our Greek yogurt. We got those sort of early nuances, and we fixed it. And yeah, because it wasn't available anywhere else in the country in any other sort of retail store, we had a whole bunch of people who came onto the platform to buy. So yeah, so the D2C platform, which is now an integral part of our business, has done a few things. It's moved us from being a product company to a product and a platform company. Number one, we see this platform as something that obviously is not going to be the lead platform for us, but it's going to be a platform that's going to cater to a large portion of our core consumers who want a full range of products, who want delivery in a particular manner, want some level of freshness, which the other platforms may or may not be able to sort of commit. Uh, that's one. And number two, because we are inherently crazy about launching new products, it's a great platform to just tell people, you know what, you want to try, click and buy from us, and we send you a few. And if you like it, you can buy from us, or you can go back to the other platforms and buy. So it's become a great sort of trial platform also for us. So yeah, that's our journey for D2C. We are not a sole D2C player, but it is an integral part of our business now.
And that brings me to just a slight segue, right? Is that if you look at all the points you kind of spoken of, and if I go to your career pre this role, which is more traditional, and that's the word to use, what have you kind of taken from that time, and which has stayed consistent through what you do now, and what has evolved in your understanding of an Indian consumer, or rather a consumer today?
I think from what has stayed is essentially the core of the brand. I think it was important then. It's probably more important now. I think consumers expect more authenticity. They expect you to communicate a lot more. So it's just not that 30-second ad. You will be expected to talk a lot more. And across all those conversations, they expect you to be authentic. And only if you're rooted to the brand, you will be authentic. If you're not, you will be called out. I think that's number one. I think the second thing about the consumer, which again, I mean, apart from the fact that they seek authenticity, is also the fact that they are really innovating super fast. And as soon as you start, as soon as they like the brand, and you build something like a D2C platform where they're able to talk to you, their
Yeah.
demands will go up, right? Can I get a little bit less sugar product? Can I get this platform? Can you cut down the plastic? These are conversations that we engage in with consumers. And it's a great platform because, I think we are able to be honest to them. There are some challenges that we cannot solve for. So for example, one of the things that consumers tell me is that, is there a different form of plastic that you could use? That there is no different form of plastic anywhere in the world at this point in time that is scalable and can be used. And as long as you tell them that, and as long as you're open to the kind of things that we are trying to do, which some of them
Yeah.
take 3, 4, 6 years, they're open to listening. And I think consumers are now just want companies to be honest. And they want to make sure that you are being authentic. And trust me, they will innovate faster than you. I've seen that. It's we did before we launched the mango coconut yogurt, we had an option to launch the mango and the blueberry. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, guys, let's just throw a survey out there. Would you like us to launch the mango version or the blueberry version? I was convinced that mango will win hands down, 80-20 types, because we are known for our mango yogurts, and Indians are known for mango. It came out 51-49. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
consumers demand a lot more from you, So and if you did and I said if you go to Bandra, they'll want a high protein, no added sugar, blueberry plus wildberry version as well because they want that, right? So
Yeah.
so that's how it is.
I would have said blueberry as well.
Yeah.
As most people listening to this will gather, I'm a regular consumer of the brand, and what I would definitely, because, and I'm talking as a consumer, right? And I feel that the evolution has also been that we suddenly see so many more options of stuff we can actually buy and mix around. Like, I know for a fact that I try to find those frozen blueberries, which some supermarkets or some guys somewhere store, and I luckily had a bunch of those through the initial part of lockdown because I generally buy them and stock them up. And when I remember the blueberry mango one came out, and I'm like, one second, I don't need to use the frozen blueberries I have. This already has some part of that,
Yeah.
and I can and 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 I feel that the more we buy stuff of D2C, I think as consumers, even if we are marketers traditionally, it evolves our own mind as to the just kind of play around with the options we have, what we can do with what. I had someone who wrote to me and said, you know, you're putting Greek yogurt into a smoothie you make at home. Why don't you add basil to it? And I was like,
Oh.
why would I add basil to a smoothie? And he said, and I realized his wife's a chef. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I got to try this one out. So I feel like we're also like learning so many more new things, and we're also evolving in that mindset. And I think what that also means is that as marketers and as people putting products out, we need to have that lens on to say, okay, what are they thinking of next?
Yes.
And is that where you kind of stick to most and saying, what are they going to think of next so that I can kind of keep up with that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's happened us in COVID, we realized that, so we always thought our Greek yogurt's a great snack. And it is. And we haven't told consumers to have it like a snack, but they've replayed saying it's a great snack. And that's how we sort of said, okay, let's just tell everyone it's a great snack. And we were convinced that there's nothing better than Greek yogurt as a snack. But I think COVID, we realized that, you know what? Because everyone's going digital and every company has a D2C and the choices uh, uh, are immense, that while snacking is finite, the choices are now supremely infinite. So the challenge for us as a company is, how do we sort of continue to cue consumers more often amidst all the other noise that's going on, saying that Greek yogurt is an amazing snack. And that's a real creative challenge that we are sort of facing today. And that's super exciting that we can try and solve for next year, because so far, like I said, we've just relied on the true power of taste. But now we've got to bring some compelling stories to challenge the other snacking companies that are coming up. So
Uh, did you always want to be a marketer? Was that a was that the thing? Like, what did you want to be when you were young? I'd like to start. I'd like to go there because I find it intriguing to see where you kind of start off and where you end up.
oh my God, I've had a very linear thought process that either has guided me or someone else has guided me through it. So I don't think I've ever. I'm from the generation which actually did not know what we wanted, and we were just going with the way the water flowed, right? So,
Oh yeah.
so that's essentially how it is. So it was pretty simple, MBA, marketing, sales and marketing actually, with a little more bent towards marketing, but joined a general FMCG company which sort of took you through sales and then moved you into marketing. And I did about, I think I was with a large corporation for about 11 years, where I did pretty much everything that had to be there. But when I look back and I realized that I did 9 years of sales and about 2.5 years of marketing. So my pedigree was all sales. Okay. So it actually was very little marketing. But I think when I look back and I said, you know what, I want to do more of marketing strategy. Deep down, Varun, if you ask me, I'm a consultant. Deep down, right? If I had to sort of turn back the clock, I would have joined a consulting company if someone would have shortlisted me in that sense. But deep down, I'm a consultant. I prefer doing now, after about 11 to 13, 14 years of experience, I'm convinced on the kind of work that I really enjoy, which is essentially, you just give me a single line brief and ask me to solve a problem, and I will think it through, come back with an exact issue, problem, how to solve for it, put a plan together. And that sort of work energizes me. If you want me to execute, I'll execute, but you know what? That work doesn't energize me. So that's really where I've reached to. So you give me anything. You want me to solve a production problem? You know what? I'll dig deep down into it and find a solution for you, and I'll put a plan in place. You want me to solve an HR problem? I'll do that. So that's the work that sort of excites me. So yeah, if I can turn back the clock, I would have been a consultant. But yeah, here I am, a marketer, learning as we speak.
I also ask that question because most times when I speak to younger people who kind of just kicking off their careers, stuff like that, a lot of them want to be very clear about, okay, I'm not clear about what I want to do, and my response generally is, you're never going to be clear about what you want to do.
Yeah.
You think stuff will come your way and you'll figure it out, but the essence of what you kind of want to do stays. Uh, would you agree with that in terms of like that's how you should kind of look at it, or if you had to turn back and the most cliched question ever, if you had to tell yourself before you started a career, saying, okay, these are things you don't have to worry about, and these are things that maybe you should focus on a little bit. What would those things be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, now when I'm a little wiser and smarter, the first question I would ask myself is, what really energizes me? I think that's the fundamental question that I ask everyone in an interview. What energizes you? Does it Does really, you know, writing a list of 10 things to do and then knocking it off on a daily basis, does that energize you? Or sitting by yourself and working alone, does it energize you? I think that's the first question I would have asked myself 13, 14 years back. And probably if I asked myself that question, I probably would have written a book or got into literature or something of that sort, right? Uh, I think if you can answer that question when you're like 20, 21, that'll be fantastic because then you open up a lot of options. Because if I answered that question upfront when I was 2021, I probably would not have done an MBA. But now having done an MBA,
Yeah.
what's the kind of role that sort of will energize me is where I finally moved down to. So I think if you can answer
Ended up.
that question
Yeah.
at periodic times in your life, and sometimes you'll have the choice to follow, sometimes you may not, but at every sort of function, you will realize there are stuff that will energize you. So even if you don't get ideally what you want, you can sort
Yeah.
of catch on jobs or roles in within that sort of domain that will energize you. I think that's sort of the question that I ask myself even today when I think of the next thing that I want to do. What will energize me?
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of energized and next, right, is that what's getting you excited about where things are really moving, right? Because the way we do business and the way we market and everything around it is, I mean, I will not use a few of those words that we used a lot of last year. So I will stay away from words which end with normal
Yes.
or any of those other ones. But what is exciting about where this entire industry is kind of going? What are you bullish on? What are you seeing as trends kind of moving ahead?
So I think there is immense scope for innovation. And there's a market out there in India that's sort of hungry for new products. And that market doesn't necessarily lie in the top 5 towns. It probably lies in the 650 odd towns or the millions of villages out there. It's a question of how can you launch products that can sort of leverage that. I think that's the first thing. And I think that's super exciting for us because we are always looking to innovate. If there is no new product that we launch in a quarter, it just deflates us, right? So we're looking to launch one product every quarter, and that's sort of super exciting for us because there is that market there that now needs it. The second exciting part is because now you have platforms and to build communities. Personally, for me, one of the things that I'm looking to do at Epigamia is that, like I said, we're moving from a product company to a platform company. Now, the product is the brand play, the consumers, you talk to them on Facebook, so on and so forth. The platform is a very different play. And one of
Yeah.
the examples I take with my team is Starbucks, right? I mean, for me, Starbucks, you may or may not like the product, but the platform's amazing. The person
Yeah, I
who
agree.
goes to Starbucks, I'm not personally, all due respect to that coffee, I'm not a big fan of Starbucks, but when the lady says you want a Wendy
Neither am I.
tall or medium, I don't know what she means, but a Starbucks loyalist knows what she means. And you become a platform when you have your own language with your consumers, right? So one of the challenges I put to my team is if you have a D2C platform and you're going to cater to the top 10% of the consumers, what is your language of the consumer that only you and that consumer understands? That's when you become a community. And I think consumers are sort of open to that. That's super exciting for me as well from a brand perspective. I think these are sort of two big things that we're looking at. So keeping that in mind, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're launching with new products, not just for the top 5 countries, which was our earlier top 5 cities, which was our earlier focus, but we're looking at the larger play. Even someone sitting at Gorakhpur who really wants a product. It might be a small portion of Gorakhpur. There's a long tail there, but we're happy to sort of service that demand. And of course, then there's the platform play, which is your core consumers. You really build this language, you really build this community. That's a super exciting brand play for us as well.
Yeah, one thing which I really wanted to talk to you about was so I remember the first time I went to your LinkedIn and I run through it and I see um, between your previous role and your present role, you took a break, right?
Yeah.
And you were very open about why you took a break. And I don't want to I don't talk about I supreme respect for the fact that you put it out there and the way you said it. So I'm going to let you speak about it because I feel that more people need to look at it that way. And being a parent, I totally like I, I would say so many I use the term so many feelings, but I was like because it really rang a bell, right? And I'd love for you to talk about.
Yeah, so the backstory to that is that I was in a large FMCG company for about 11 years. Like I said, I did about the first 6, 7 years, I did some fantastic sales roles. Uh, and then for about 2.5 years, I did marketing roles before they decided to sort of pull me back into mainline operations. And I was heading the business in the north. Fantastic role, great P&L responsibility. And I think I joined that role when my son was 1 year old. And I had the worst 2 years of my life doing that role, because while the role was exciting, the job was super challenging. It was a great people's role, which I like, but it was not a role that energized me. I did that for about 2 years, and they were tough sales years. Make no mistake about it. I don't think we did well as a team, but they were super tough. I was spending way long hours. I wasn't getting to spend any time with my son, and I really wasn't solving the problem for the company because it wasn't energizing me to do it. So I think, like I tell most people, I sucked at that job because I just didn't find the motivation to do it. And at the other end, here is this little boy who's growing up, and I wasn't getting to spend enough time with him. And I was like, why am I doing this? I don't like my job. I'm not doing well at it. I have a 3-year-old son who's, you know, probably growing up, and I'm not getting to spend enough time with him. And the worst, I don't know what I want to do next. So I said, you know what, this is it. Let me just, take a break. So I quit. The company was also pretty happy in many ways because, I didn't have anything that I wanted from them, and I wasn't the right guy for the role. So, it worked out really well. I was hoping to take a break for about 6 to 9 months. It ended up being a year and a half, which is great in some form. The back 3, 4 months were a little stressful. But that's where I took a break. I spent a lot of time with Rian, my son. I used to drop him to school, pick him up, spend a good part of the day with him. Also get a good 2, 3 hours in between to do stuff that I wanted, could be pro bono work, a little bit of consulting, getting to know a few startups. And I sort of, that's the first time I asked that question, what energizes me? That's the first time I had an answer. And I realized that what I'd been doing for the last 11 years, a lot of roles did not energize me. Now, of course, you had to do that because you will have to keep doing stuff that you don't like. But it seemed like my career was progressing to roles that just will not energize me, right? So I had to sort of say, what do I want to do? I want to do more of a consulting, a strategy role. I want to start building something from scratch. I'm not a career-minded guy. I don't want to climb a ladder. I just want to do good work, and hopefully there'll be a pot of gold at the end, which I can be happy with. And so I said, that's the best place to do something for 5 years and have a pot of gold and do stuff that your pedigree does not sort of support in many ways, was join a startup. And a year and a half down the break, I joined Epigamia, and it's been great since. Yeah, I've got to do what I wanted to do and start to build a brand and a business and an organization here. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and what I love about that entire piece, right, is that I call it prioritizing. At some point in life, you kind of sit down and say, what are my priorities? And many times it's a mixture. It's a mixture of family and career and everything around it. And many times with roles and with jobs, the family kind of gets a short end of the stick. But here you kind of got to kind of balance that out and kind of, I mean, I know for me, for the last 1 year, just working from home, spending with my daughter, it's been fabulous, right? Because the initial couple of years, while you're there, you're still going out to an office, which is why I'm like a strong propagator of work from home if you're a parent. Because I'm like, you get to spend so much more time with them. Also because they're also studying from home, and I don't know how. I want to see how that evolves once they actually have to go to physical school. So I'm guessing that's still some time away. And just that balance, right? Just that balance of how you kind of bring stuff together to kind of make your mind really work, but also, like I say, mind and heart is both get balanced out. And I guess your story for me is a great example of how you kind of sometimes you take a pause and then get that balance, and you know exactly what you're working towards.
No, I agree. I mean, a pause is most recommended if you can handle it financially and emotionally. It's not easy to do, but I kind of shut it off for about 6 to 9 months, like I said. The last 4, 5 months were a little unnerving. What are you going to do next? Which job? And which startup? Those were sort of, it got into that stage. But if you can emotionally and financially manage it, everyone should take a pause. It's good to do. You learn a lot, I think.
Towards the end of every episode, I do this segment where I actually ask my guests a set of questions, not necessarily related to their work, but more about them. I've already asked you a question about you, but these other questions are generally standard across all the episodes that I do. What is that one thing that you spend a lot of time doing, consuming, just generally obsessing over, if that's the word to use? But most people would be surprised to know that that's something that you're really into. What would that thing be?
I obsess about my 1.5 hour in the morning, um, which is where I get to spend some time reading or going through some content. So I read a lot. So I obsess about that. Nobody can trouble me then. I hate to start a day without doing that. Everyone in the household knows that, don't go anywhere near him because he's going to probably give you a deadpan face. But I obsess about that hour and a half, and that hour and a half is mine because the rest of the day you pretty much lose some level of control. So I obsess about that. I read a lot, or I watch some Netflix content in that hour and a half, or I do a bit of a workout. But that hour and a half is mine. I demand it, which is why I wake up really early before the rest of the world wakes up. So
How early do you wake up?
six,
Because this is a conversation I have with many people.
6.
Okay, that's not bad.
That's not bad.
I'm around the same
Yeah,
space, so
6.
I'm like,
6. The rest of the
but a
world
person
wakes
who's
up
a
late.
late riser for me.
I wake up.
Yeah.
So,
Um, Anything that you've read in recent times, read, listened to, watched that you'd recommend that people should just kind of consume?
yeah. So I read a book called The Tribe by Sebastian Junger, which I found fascinating. And one of my all-time favorite books is Guns, Germs, and Steel, which sort of brought me to this genre of history and man and how we all got here. And now I'm reading a full bunch of books that sort of elaborate on that point. So yeah, those are sort of the two books that come to mind that I love reading.
What can you put together in an instant?
What can I put together in an incident? My latest one is a cheese board. I'm good at that now.
I've never understood cheese boards. I'll be honest. It like I've never like, every time I hear someone say cheese board, I'm like that's just like a bunch of
So
cheese. But I'm not. I've been told I'm terrible because I don't value how nice a cheese board can be. But I'm like yeah.
yeah, but
I never. What's the point of it? Explain the point.
actually, it's quite therapeutic. So I don't eat any of that. But when people come home and they love cheese, so putting up a cheese board, and I don't eat any of it. But just putting up a cheese board is therapeutic. You get
That's
home,
even worse. You're making people eat cheese.
yeah. So putting up a cheese board is my latest fascination. Yes, and a salad.
And why do you think advertising will not die? Oh, I said it. Perfect.
Why do I think?
Why do you think advertising will not die?
Oh, advertising can't die. We're always advertising, right? I mean, if you look at what the core of advertising was to get people to behave or take notice of a particular thing, right? And uh, we always give advertising this word as a 30-second ad or a 60-second ad. But whenever a brand says something, you're always advertising because there's always an intent to why you're doing what you're doing. We're not in the business of feature filmmaking. We're in the business of Greek yogurt. So if you're telling you something, we want you to buy Greek yogurt. So yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much for doing this. This has been great,
Awesome.
and thank you for all the stories and all the insights because I think there's so much to kind of note down and learn from this. And thanks for coming on Advertising is Dead.
Thank you, Varun. Looking forward to it. Next time. One more time. Sometime.
One more time. We'll do it one more time.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, guys.